Welcome to Tech Talk. Tariffs are wreaking havoc throughout our industry, and many projects are in a state of paralysis. Semiconductors got a temporary reprieve, but not PCBs. They remain taxed at a whopping 125%. So let's dive in and see if we can make some sense of this.
Welcome to Tech Talk with Trevor Galbraith, a video podcast that features industry leaders and experts from the electronics manufacturing community. Recorded at major events around the world and from the studios of Global SMT TV. Now here is your host, Trevor Galbraith.
Joining us now to discuss all of these issues is Ed Evangelista. He is president and CEO of a company called Federal Electronics. Welcome, Ed. Nice to see you.
Nice to see you, Trevor. Thanks for having me.
Okay, great. So let's set the stage a little bit. Why don't we start with you giving us a very quick introduction to Federal Electronics, what markets you're into, your locations, and your capabilities.
Sure. So this is a family-owned business. It was started originally in 1948 by my father. In 1961, it got into contract manufacturing by building cable assemblies and wire harnesses for IBM in Poughkeepsie, New York. It was mainframe computers. And that was the start of a DNA that continues today. It is high reliability. That's the market we play in. It's a pretty wide umbrella. Under that umbrella, we've got three vertical market segments. First being aerospace and defense, second being medical, third being industrial, which pretty much is a catch-all for whoever doesn't fit into the other two cleanly. Could be analytical instrumentation, robotics, semiconductor capital equipment. We've got a facility in Cranston, Rhode Island. We've also got one down in Hermosillo, Sonora, Mexico. And our capabilities are based on vertical integration. So we build printed circuit board assemblies, cable and wire harness assemblies, and then we integrate them into finished products and large frames and weldments. So our objective is to bring the services of a tier 1 CM minus the product design to companies who don't necessarily have the spend that would interest those types of CM.
Right. Okay. Well, it sounds like you're a very well-established and well-set-up company, obviously in the higher L end of the business. And you must be, I'm sure, doing somersaults just now with all the different issues that are out there. So, I'd like to ask how the current tariffs and supply chain issues are affecting Federal Electronics, because we're hearing stories of massive stockpiling of components and devices. We're also hearing stories of some of the large box suppliers having run out of certain components. They're not even available. And much of that's been bought up by the tier 1s and tier 2 companies, which means that the tier 3s and tier 4s are going to be left exposed. What's the situation for Federal?
So we're affected in two ways. One of them is certainly for the components. At this point, we haven't been as affected as I think we will be, because we're consuming components that we have in stock that haven't been tariffed. And we've been able so far to keep the pipeline full. Although we're seeing instances where we track certain stock levels for certain critical components, and we can see that they're being consumed. The second way that we're affected is because we build in Mexico. As long as the product is compliant with the USMCA, which is the trade agreement between the US, Mexico, and Canada, it comes across the border tariff-free. That's not to say that the components aren't affected. They are. If it's not compliant, then from that perspective, we will try to bring it back to the United States to mitigate some of the cost associated with it. But again, the components still affect us. So right now,
sorry.
Yep, please.
I was going to say, how do you know the components where they've originated from? I mean, how does a border agent know when they open up an assembly that this component was originally came from China, or this component originally came from Vietnam, or this component came from India, which all have different levels of tariff?
We have to provide that information. So there are codes that go with every product, and the border agents will look at it. And in some instances, we've worked hard to get product that is not compliant. It could be by sourcing different components. In some instances, there's no way to do it. And in that instance, as I said, if it's more cost effective to move it back up to Cranston, we will. But they will look at the entire assembly and they will decide whether or not, based on the content, it is compliant or not. And they go into that level of detail.
Right, right. Wow. That's incredible. So, what's the situation with regards to your customers at the moment? I mean, what actions are you taking to try and mitigate this? Are you contacting each of your customers and trying to pin down what the expected demand is going to be over the next 6 months?
We are. So we're having daily conversations with our customers. We've asked them to be as specific as possible and to extend their horizons as far as possible so that we can use them for planning purposes. And we've also talked about how much liability they want to take for creating that pipeline.
Right.
So far, I think it's been split 50-50. So we've got customers that are still in a wait and see mode. And to a certain extent, I think a lot of people are paralyzed, waiting to see what's going to happen with the 90-day period before the tariffs are put back in place, or hopefully negotiations come to some other conclusion. And we've got other customers who've said, I want to look out into the future. I want to take at least critical parts, or at least the high dollar parts. And I'd like to create more of a safety stock so that we can find a way to mitigate those tariffs for as long as we can.
Right. I mean, is this not taking us way back to the old post-COVID days, where we had all this, excessive supply chain inventory? We're going to be left with excessive inventories all over the place.
It's frightening how similar it is. And coming out of COVID, everybody was talking about supply chain resiliency. So what are we going to do so we don't get into the situation again? And these tariffs have basically created that situation again. And I don't think we've seen the impact of that yet. I think it's too early in the process, but it's coming.
Right, right. Yeah, I mean, it's true because the effects of these tariffs don't affect products that have already left the port. So if it's on the sea and it takes a month to get here, it's going to be a little while before you actually start to see the real impact of all this, for sure. What's the situation regarding some of the brokerages that are out there? I mean, you've got companies like CalcuQuote, Parts Analytics, Supply Frame, Luminoval, etc., who do a service where they have APIs built into certain, the major component suppliers, so that you can see in real time the availability and the real time price of components. Is that something that would help to stay ahead of this and have a more real time handle on what's happening?
Absolutely. And I think there's more companies that are doing that now. So back when COVID hit, we didn't have those, at least not as many.
Yeah.
And we have brokers that we use, but we don't use a broker unless a customer agrees that we'll use a broker. And the brokers we use will typically test the product and give us some kind of chain of custody. So we know that it's legitimate, it's not a counterfeit, it comes from the factory.
Yeah.
With those other services, and as I've been told, I've not experienced it yet, but it's something we're looking into. I think these services will allow for Federal Electronics to post inventory that may be excess to us and have that visible to folks who need it. And likewise, we'll have visibility to other excess material that's posted. Now, whether there's a cost associated with that, I think it varies based on the platform. But I think that could be very helpful in dealing with short-term shortages. I don't think we're going to get large quantities of product on there. I think if anything, it might mitigate a short-term circumstance, but it's helpful. It's certainly, and I think we're going to need it.
Right. Okay. Wow. So I don't envy the position that you're in, that's for sure. I mean, two things I've learned over my time in the industry is that engineers hate change. and the second thing is when governments get involved in an industry, it causes massive change. It's really significant when these changes are made. So let's turn our attention back to federal for a minute. I mean, what would you say for somebody looking at you? What is your key differentiators? What makes you special and different from any of your competitors?
So I think there are a few elements that make us different. So one of them is our vertical integration. The fact
Mhm.
that we do the interconnect assemblies, we do the PCBA, and we do the integration. It gives us more control over the labor. It gives
Mhm.
us more control over the supply chain, which right now is critical. And it also allows us to be much more competitive for two reasons. One, we virtually eliminate margin stack up. So whereas if I needed to buy a large harness assembly to integrate into an industrial control panel,
Mhm.
in that harness assembly, when I pay that price, I've got all the margins and the material markups and everything that I'm now marking up. By virtue of the fact that we're building from scratch that harness, we don't apply that margin stack up. So in effect, there's a flat BOM. So that helps us to be extremely competitive from that perspective. The
Yeah.
second element, and I think this is also a differentiator, is the fact that we have facilities both domestically and in Mexico. Mexico has been a tremendous opportunity for us to get access to lower costs, however, still addressing the unique requirements of high rel. So what we'll work to do with the customer is to determine what product or parts of the product are properly sourced in Mexico to take advantage of the lower labor content, and then the integration either happening in Mexico or happening here in Cranston, Rhode Island. So
Mhm.
what it does is it gives us a lot of flexibility in terms on a project by project or even by assembly basis to put the most cost effective product in the customer's hands. And I think those are two things that definitely differentiate us. The third
Right.
thing is the way we operate. So our ERP system is designed, and our systems and protocols in general are designed to deal with that common thread that goes through all high rel, which is the volumes tend to be lower rather than higher. The complexity tends to be higher rather than lower, tends to be a lot more part numbers, and the industries tend to be heavily regulated. So the ability to be flexible in that environment and deal with changes in demand is critical. We run full MRPs and schedules on a nightly basis. We have a portal that sends 75 to 80% of the requirements out to our supply base automatically. So doing things like that put us in a position to respond to the type of volatility that some of our customers have in their schedules, do it effectively, cost effectively, efficiently, and make sure that we're sharing that information so that we virtually become a seamless extension of their operation.
Right. Right. Well, it certainly sounds like you're well set up for it for sure. Now, in your one of your facility, I think the Cranston facility, you've got a clean room built in there, a 10,000 clean room. What do you use that for specifically?
So it's primarily for integration. So
Mm.
we'll build other product and then bring it into that room for integration. Typically, it's a wipe down. It's packaging as well. So there's multiple packaging steps we may have to take depending on what the product is, if it's medical, if it's industrial. So we will use that for the integration, the packaging, and the final shipment out of that facility. In some instances, we've actually looked at setting the exact same type of Class 10,000 clean room down in Mexico because we have customers with product that we're building here that they would like to dual source out of both of our facilities. So that's going to be something that we're going to be adding in the future.
Right. Right. Is the product coming out of your Mexico facility, is that 100% going to the United States, or is that going to other countries throughout the world?
So both. So a good
Mm.
portion of it goes to the United States, but we have customers with facilities in other parts of the world, and we're sending that product to, in some cases, Asia, in some cases, Europe.
Mhm.
And so we're the supplier of record, but we're sending product both domestically and then offshore as well.
Right. Okay. Excellent. Um, so that's useful business as well because Mexico's got some fantastic free trade agreements around the world, so it makes it very useful. So anyway, finally, I noticed that also in the Mexico facility you got recent ITAR, AS9100 ITAR accreditation. So has that made a big difference to the sort of business you can do down there?
So we just added, actually this month, AS9100 for aerospace and defense. And we are in the process of creating a technological control plan, which will be reviewed by the State Department to be able to build ITAR product down there. That is a significant development for us,
Hmm.
both from an
Hmm.
aerospace non-ITAR and an ITAR perspective, because our customers are looking for ways to reduce cost. And the other part of this is, in general, depending on what pockets of the country you're in, domestically, there is a shortage of skilled labor. And that is not as much a case down in Mexico. So having the ability to put that type of product in the Mexico facility for those type of aerospace and defense customers who see a need and are willing to have their product built offshore, near shore, I think maybe is a better way to put it. That's a considerable development for us, and we've gotten a lot of good feedback from our customers, and that's the reason why we pursued that. So I think it's going to be a very positive development for us in the future.
Okay, good. So looking forward, Ed, I mean, beyond these tariffs, because they will settle down at some point in the future, the electronics industry is going to continue to expand by application. I mean, there's just so much demand out there. It's going to continue. What do you see as being the sort of 5-year outlook for Federal Electronics?
So I think there's going to be an expansion of capabilities as our customers are providing their technological roadmaps. And we try to do that with every customer so we understand where their new designs are going. I think there's going to be new facilities potentially in play at other parts of the country. I don't anticipate that we'll locate outside of North America, but within North America, both domestically and within Mexico, I see that as opportunities for future growth. I think that basically our objective is we're going to have facilities that either have very specific requirements, for example, adding the capability to do custom sheet metal, precision machine parts, weldments, things of that nature, or just to be a site where integration can take place, which will virtually mirror exactly what we do in our facilities in Cranston and Hermosillo right now. So that's where I see this going, because I think customers are getting much more savvy when it comes to outsourcing. And I think a lot of them really don't want to do as much of the work as they're doing right now. So I think there's going to be higher levels of outsourcing, and they're going to be more reliant upon folks like us. And I think our footprint in both the U.S. and in Mexico will serve them well.
Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, that growth, though, I mean, do you see that as being greenfield, or do you see it as being acquisition?
More likely acquisition, both for the integration side and for the acquisition of new capabilities. We've actually looked at some facilities down in Mexico for precision machine parts. So for adding capabilities, I think it's going to definitely be through acquisition. I can see doing greenfields in certain locations where our customer base is located, but if possible, we prefer to acquire.
Right. Okay. Well, it sounds like you're on the right track, Ed, and I want to thank you for coming in and telling us about Federal today, but also a very big thank you for your insights into some of the issues that we're facing with tariffs in the supply chain at the moment. So thank you for that.
Thank you, Trevor.